What's up developers, it's Dari here and welcome back to a new video where we're going to continue on with the fourth episode of our FilamentPHP series where we're going to build our first resource. When working with admin panels, you will hear the term resources quite a lot, and honestly, you can pretty much see it as a resource controller, where you can define the CRUD operations and defining relationships between them. Resources in FilamentPHP is nothing different. They are classes that define the data model for a particular resource, such as the product or a customer, and provide the necessary functionalities to interact with the data. Alright, let's get into creating our first resource and see what we can configure with it. FilamentPHP has created a command for us which we can use to create a resource. So let's navigate to the CLI. Now let's perform the PHP artisan make filament-resource command, and then we should name our resource. Filament resource name should be in singular form and use Pascal case. This means that the first letter of each word in the name should be capitalized, and there should be no underscores or spaces between words. Also, keep in mind that the resource name should be equal to your model name. This is because the resource class is responsible for defining the data model for a specific resource, such as a product or a customer. Personally, I would always say that you should name it the same as the model it represents for clarity and consistency in the codebase. So in our case, let's name it product. Now what this command does is creating a new filament directory in the app directory. So let's navigate back to PHP Storm and scroll up, and let me actually close off all the tabs that I have open. Alright, let's open the app directory, where you will see that we have a new filament directory, and once we open it, you will find a resources directory, a product resource directory, and a product resource class. Now this class has been generated based on the command we just performed. It provides the necessary functionalities to interact with the data, such as listing, creating, editing, viewing, and deleting records. This class also extends Filament its resource class. So how does this look behind the scenes? Well, when a user interacts with the resource, FilamentPHP uses the product resource class to handle the request and manage the data. If we navigate to the browser for a moment and open our local host, let's refresh it, you will see that FilamentPHP has created a products tab for us. Once we open it, you will see that it has created a list overview. Well, we currently don't have any product, so it can't really show anything. And this is happening because we haven't really told our product resource what needs to be shown to the user when they either open the table overview or when they create a new product. So let's get into it right away. Let's see what's going on inside our product resource class. At the top, you will see that FilamentPHP added two properties for us, right here. And I'm always quite happy when the naming of properties says a lot. The first property, right here, basically defines the model class which is associated with the class. This is also one of the reasons why I said that you should keep the name of your filament resource equal to the model itself, because FilamentPHP will detect the model class. Then it has a second property right here, which defines the hero icon in front of the products tab in the left sidebar. Now there are tons of other configurations you can set right here, and there are too many to cover right now. But if you want to check them out, you can simply click through on the resource class, where you will find all available properties right here. Now one cool thing about Filament that I have to mention is that it works without necessarily covering all properties. The question mark that you will see right in front of the data type right here basically indicates that a property can hold a value of either a string or null. Now there are a couple properties that I want to configure, and in the demo app you saw that the tabs product, categories, orders were all grouped together. So let's do that right here as well. On the line below, we simply need to overwrite the navigation group property. So let's say protected static string navigation group is equal to, let's say, shop. Then I want to change the hero icon in front of the products tab right here to hero icon -o-bold. Once we navigate back to Google Chrome, refresh it, you will see that we have grouped it under the tab shops. Now you can also change the navigation label. Right now it's products and I'm completely fine by that, but let me show you how you do that. Let's define a protected static string and it's called navigation label. And let's set it equal to, let's say, test. Once we refresh it, you will see that it has been changed to test. So let's navigate back and let's change it to products. And that was basically it. For now, I want to focus on the two most important methods. We have the form method right here, and we have the table method. Now, the form method defines the fields that will be displayed in the form used to create or edit a resource. The form method defines the fields that will be displayed in the form used to create or edit a resource. Then the table method right here. This method is important because it allows developers to customize how the data is displayed in the table and control which columns are visible to the users. Now, since the first view of a user is the table overview, I want to start inside the table method right here. You can see the same structure as with Filament, its service provider, where it has a couple pre-chained methods on the table object. Through the table object, we can define the columns and other aspects of the table view for a particular resource, right inside of the columns method. It does offer more, which we will cover later on, such as filters, actions, bulk actions, and way more, but for now, let's stick with the column. Right here, we basically need to return back an array with the fields. Now, before I start off, I've got to mention that you will see me and a lot of others use a text column quite a lot. Now, text column is used as a default column type for all field types in FilamentPHP because it is a versatile column that can handle different data types, such as strings, integers, and booleans. So let's define it. Let's say text column. We need to import filament \tables \columns. Then we need to call the make method where we need to pass in the column name. So let's say that the first value of my table overview needs to be the product name. Then we can add a comma right after it and basically define our second column. So let's say text column again. And I want to make the brand.name. And I know that we haven't covered relationships and we will do that later on, but for now, this will basically look on the brand relationship and it will grab the name of the brand associated with the product. The next field that I want to show is the visibility, which is a boolean, but I don't want to show true or false to the user. What we can do right here is call the icon column, where we need to pull in filament \tables \columns, and this is the last time mentioning it because they all come from the same class. We need to make the isVisible column. And then we need to chain the boolean method to it. Now, I also want to show the price of a product. So let's say text column again. We're going to make the price. Now, I've got 3 more left because I also want to show the quantity on the table overview. So let's say text column again. Make me the quantity. 2 more. We have the text column again. Make me the published_at, and finally, let's say text column again, where we need to make the type. Now we're missing one, which is the image, and it's completely up to you whether you want to show it on the table overview. I'll just add it. So let's just go right above the name, and let's say image column. Make me the image. Now if we navigate to the browser, and let's refresh it, you will see that we're still prompted with a no product screen. So let's quickly navigate back to PHP Storm and connect to our local database to create a product. So I'll do that real quick. Now let me connect to my MySQL database. The user is root. My password is Dari1234. Then I have my database name, which is hostinger_filament. Once I click on apply and OK, you'll see that I have been connected with my database. And let me close off this panel and let's open the products table. And it's alright if you don't want to create a product. We will create the input fields in a bit so we can create one through Filament as well. But for demonstration purposes, it's a little bit easier to show products right now. Now, before we can create our product, you can see that we need to define the brand first, because it needs a foreign key constraint. So let's open the brands table. Let's create a new row. Let's say 1. The name is Hostinger. The slug is hostinger, the URL is hostinger.com, the primary hex is hashtag, and I'll just paste it. The visibility is 1, the description is just hostinger, and let's add the timestamps. Let's perform a query. Let's close off the branch table and let's create a new product. Let's say ID is 1, the brand ID is 1 as well. The name is VPS hosting, slug is VPS-hosting. The SKU is VPS dash a couple of random numbers. The image will be skipped for now. The description is VPS hosting. The quantity is 100. The price is, let's say, 10. The visibility is true. It is featured and the type is downloadable. It is published right now. And it has been created and updated right now. Once we perform a query, you will see that the image column can't be null. So let's basically add a test right here, perform a request, and you will see that we have inserted a new row. Now keep in mind that these are just test products. An actual VPS hosting is a monthly fee that you have to pay or yearly. And working on that functionality basically takes away learning FilamentPHP. But that can be done in another tutorial if you're interested. Let's navigate back to the browser. Let's refresh it. And right here, you will see that we have defined our first product. And it only shows the columns that we have specifically defined inside the columns method right here. Now, even though we haven't added an image, I do need to mention something real quick. And that's because the image depends on the app_URL environment variable inside the .env file. So if we open our .env file, you will see that the app URL is just localhost. In order to show images in FilamentPHP, you need to set this equal to the URL you're using. So in my case, it will be hostinger-filament.test. Now, even if I go to the browser right now and refresh it, it won't show an image, but it will do it once we create our actual product through the New Product button. We're going to cover filters in the next episode, so what I want to do right now is working on the form method, which, like I mentioned before, focuses on the views of forms. So basically the fields that will be displayed in the form used to create or edit a resource. Now, if we hover over the row that we have right here, you will see, well, probably not on my screen in the bottom left, that it will redirect you to edit the row. Once we click on it, you will see that this page is empty. And if we navigate back and click on New Product, you will see that this page is empty as well. And this is happening because in our editor, if we scroll up in our product resource, you'll see that the form object is empty. So let's start building our form. Just like with the table overview, we're going to start with the product name. We're not going to define a text column this time, but we need to define a text input, where we need to pull in filament_forms_components. We're once again gonna call the make method, which accepts one argument of a string, which is the column name. And in our case, it will be name. If we navigate back to the browser and refresh it, you will see that we have added our first input field, but we somehow need to make sure that we group these. So let's navigate back to PHP Storm and let's remove our input fields for a moment. And the schema method right here is used to define the fields and sections that make up the form or table for a particular resource, right? But next to just simply adding an input field, we could also use the group class, where we also need to make a call to the make method, where on the line below, we need to chain the schema method again, pass in an array, where right here we can define a section. So let's say section, let's pull in the class. We once again need to make a call to the make method, and right on our section, we can chain the schema method one more time, where in here we can define our input fields. So let's say text input, make a name. If we navigate back to the browser and refresh it, now let me actually enable dark mode. Yeah, I think this looks a little bit better. You will see that it has added a background, well, basically a panel with the input field that we have defined inside our section. So what other fields do we have next to the name? Well, we have the slug, which is also a text input. So let's make it. All right. And we have one more, which is the description. Now, instead of using a text input right here, I want to use the markdown editor of FilamentPHP with the name of description. And I pretty much assume that we all know what a markdown editor is. A markdown editor is a text editor designed to simplify the process of writing in markdown syntax, which can then be converted to HTML. Now let's navigate back to Google Chrome and refresh it. And right here, you will see that we have created a simple panel with 3 input fields. Now there is a small issue that I've got right here. And that's because the input fields can be placed next to each other instead of below each other, because it's taking quite a lot of space right now, which is unnecessary. Now the schema in Filament uses grid for its layout structure. So what we could do on our schema method, which is right here, is basically chain the columns method, where we need to specify the number of columns inside of it. So let's say 2. Since we want the name and slug to be next to each other. But we also need to chain one method on the markdown editor with the name of column span. Since the markdown should be span full, meaning that it should span both columns. So let's pass in a string of full, and I'll show you right now what I mean. Let's navigate back, refresh it. You'll see that we have defined a grid system of 2 columns. So column 1 is the name and column 2 is the slug. And we said that the description should span over both columns. Now let's create a new panel to the right this time, since that one is empty at the moment. So let's navigate back to PHP Storm. And right below our first group, which ends, I think, right here, we can define a new group. Well, we could define it ourselves, but we could also copy the entire group, paste it right below of it, navigate back to Google Chrome and refresh it, where you will see that we have added 2 panels next to each other. Now we don't want the same input fields, so let's navigate back to PHP Storm. Let's delete whatever we have inside the schema method. Now let's also delete the columns that we have added on it. Now right now you will see that the section make method is empty, but we could pass in a string right here, which will basically define the header. So if we say status, navigate back to Google Chrome and refresh it, you will see that the section has a title of status, which is pretty cool in my opinion. So let's navigate back and let's define the fields inside of it. So what do we want to have to the right, which is less important? Well, we want a toggle for the column is_visible. Then we want another toggle for the is_featured. Now let's define another one, which is a date picker with a column name of published_at. Let's navigate back to Google Chrome and refresh it. And honestly, it's beginning to look pretty nice, right? We have created 2 panels where we have a couple input fields, toggles, and a timestamp. Now we do need to add a couple more fields, and I want to add a panel right below the first panel again. So let's navigate back to PHP Storm. Now we don't need to make a group right below the status, because that part will be visible right here. What we want to do is basically create it in the section where we have defined the name, slug, and description. So what we need to do is basically define the entire section that we have right here inside the group schema. So let's go right below the columns and let's paste it right here. Once we navigate back to Google Chrome and refresh it, you will see that we have added the second panel right below the first panel. So let's navigate back to PHP Storm. Let's delete the columns and let's delete the text input fields that we have as well. So I want to give my section a title of, let's say, pricing and inventory. And I want to define a couple fields right here. The first one is a text input, make me the SKU. I have another text input, which is for the price. I have another text input again, which is for the quantity. But I also want to give the user the option to select the type, which is either downloadable or deliverable. So for that, I'm going to use a select type. I'm going to make the type, and I'm going to chain the options to it through the options method. Let's pass in an array right here, because we do need to define our options, where the first option is downloadable. And I'm going to keep the value empty for a moment. And the second option is deliverable, which is equal to an empty string as well. Now we could add the values static right here, but we have to find the enum that we can use. So let's say product type enum, and let's say downloadable, but I'm going to get the value from it. Now let's do the same thing for deliverable. Let's say product type enum, deliverable value. Now, the issue that we have, once again, is if we navigate back to Google Chrome, refresh it, we have 4 big input fields right below each other. We could basically align them next to each other. And what I want to do right here is chain the columns method to it. And I want 2 columns next to each other. If we refresh it, you'll see that this looks a lot better. Let's add a new section right below our status right here, where the user has the option to add an image associated with the product. So let's navigate back to, let's say, PHP Storm. Let's go right below our schema. Let's define a new section. Let's make a section with a name of image. We're going to chain the schema method again. We're going to pass in an array where we're going to define the file upload. And we're going to import it. We're going to make an image. And I'm going to chain one more method to it, which is the collapsible method, which I think is necessary because the panel would get way too big. Now let's navigate back to Google Chrome and refresh it, where you will see that we have created a pretty cool panel where we can drag and drop our file. We cannot create a product yet because we have not defined a brand ID column. Now this course has an episode on how to set up relationships, but for now I just want to define the relationship simply, as it depends on a value from the brands table. So let's quickly define the relationship without any additional options. So let's navigate back to Google Chrome and let's copy the entire section of image. Let's paste it right below of it. Let's replace the heading with associations. And let's get rid of the file input that we have. And I'm simply going to create a select. And I'm going to make a brand ID. And then I'm going to chain a method that I want to cover later on, but I have to cover it right now, which is relationship. Now the relationship method accepts 2 arguments. The first one is the relationship name, which is brand, while the second one is the column, which in our case will be name. And let's get rid of collapsible. All right, I think that we are ready to create our first product. So let's give it a name of cloud hosting. The slug is cloud_hosting. The description is cloud hosting as well. It is visible. It is featured. And I'm going to publish it today. The SKU is CLO and a couple numbers. The price is 10. The quantity is 100. The type is downloadable. I'm going to add an image. All right. And then I'm going to select the brand. Now let's click on create. And right here, you will see that we have been prompted with a message saying that our product has been created. Pretty cool, isn't it? We have finally created our first product through FilamentPHP. The cool thing about using the form builder, well, if we navigate back to our products, click on edit on cloud hosting, you will see that it has found the values from the database and it has added it on the fields we have defined. And this is happening because we have passed in the column names to the make method for our component. So let's change the name right here to cloud hosting, let's say 2, and the slug as well. Scroll down, click on save changes. We have been prompted with a message saying saved. Click on products again, where you will see that the name right here has been updated. Now so far we have defined the create, read and update functionalities in CRUD. So what do we have left? Well, the last operation is the delete operation. Let's click on a resource, or let's say cloud hosting, and in the top right corner, you will see a delete button. So let's confirm it. All right. We have been prompted with a message saying deleted, and you can see that the row has been deleted from our list. For now, I want to wrap up this video where we have created our first FilamentPHP table overview, followed with the create and update pages. We're definitely not done, since in the next video, we're going to have a look at resource modifiers and resource filters. Now, this was it for today's video. If you enjoyed the content and you want to see more, leave this video a thumbs up, and if you're new to this channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.